Welcome to Hearths of Myths. Tonight, the fire in our hearth must burn a little brighter, and we must draw our cloaks a little tighter around our shoulders. The story we are about to enter is not a tale of golden halls or sun-drenched vineyards. It does not belong to the warm Mediterranean or the ordered sands of the desert. We are traveling to the edge of the known world, to an island of 40 shades of green, beaten by the gray Atlantic waves and shrouded in an eternal, shifting mist. We are traveling to ancient Ireland, and there, standing at the ford of a river that runs red with blood, waiting in the shadow of a dolmen stone, is a figure that has haunted the human imagination for 2,000 years. She is the washer at the ford. She is the crow perched on the dying warrior's shoulder. She is the terrifying scream that rises above the clash of iron shields. She is the Morrigan. To understand the Morrigan, one must first unlearn the modern desire for simple definitions. In the vast and complex library of world mythology, there are gods of war, and there are goddesses of the earth. Mars is a soldier. Demeter is a mother. We like to keep them in separate boxes. One destroys, the other creates. But the Celtic mind, the mind that carved spirals into the stones of Newgrange and wove intricate knots into gold, did not see the world in straight lines. They understood a deeper, darker truth, that life and death are not opposites, but neighbors. They understood that the earth which grows the grain is the same earth that swallows the dead, and that sovereignty, the right to rule the land, is bought with blood. The Morrigan is the embodiment of this terrifying unity. She is the great queen, but she is also the phantom queen. She is the land itself, rising up to devour those who are unworthy to rule it. Before we can look into her eyes, eyes that are said to hold the cold indifference of a reptile and the sharpness of a bird of prey, we must look at the world that birthed her. We must turn the pages of the Liber Gabála Érenn, the book of the taking of Ireland, the great medieval manuscript that attempts to chronicle the mythical history of the Irish people. In these ancient texts, transcribed by Christian monks who were simultaneously terrified and fascinated by their pagan ancestors, we find the arrival of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Imagine the scene. It is deep antiquity. The island of Ireland is currently inhabited by the Fir Bolg, a sturdy, mortal race who live close to the soil. They are the men of the bags, the workers of the earth. One day, they look to the north and west. The sky, usually a canvas of drifting clouds, begins to darken. But this is not a storm. It is something unnatural. A great blackness is rolling across the sea, a fog so thick and so heavy that it blots out the sun for 3 days and 3 nights. The air grows cold. The birds fall silent. The very grass seems to hold its breath. This is the arrival of the Tuatha Dé Danann, the people of the goddess Danu. They do not arrive in ships that dock at the harbor. They arrive, the texts tell us, in dark clouds. They descend upon the mountain of Conmaicne Rain in Connaught, bringing with them a mastery of druidry, knowledge, and prophecy that the world had never seen. Some later versions of the myth say they burned their ships upon arrival, creating such a massive plume of smoke that it merged with the magical mist, signaling to the locals and to history itself that there was no going back. They were here to stay. They were gods, but they were also a tribe. They had kings, smiths, poets, healers, and warriors. And among them, walking through the smoke and the mist, was a woman, or perhaps 3 women, or perhaps 1 woman who was 3. This ambiguity is the first lesson of the Morrigan. She defies the singular. She is the daughter of Ernmas, a mother goddess of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Her father is often obscure, lost to the eroding winds of time, but her lineage places her firmly at the heart of the divine family. She is the sister of the land goddesses Eriu, Banba, and Fodla, whose names became the names of Ireland itself. But while her sisters represent the soil, the sovereignty, and the spirit of the nation in times of peace, the Morrigan represents the land in times of crisis. Her name itself is a subject of endless debate among scholars and linguists, and this debate reveals the duality of her nature. The old Irish word mór can translate to great, making her the Great Queen, a title of majesty, authority, and supreme power. She is the queen of the gods, a being of immense status. However, the word mór also has etymological roots connecting to the Germanic mare, as in nightmare. In this reading, she is the phantom queen, the queen of demons, the shape that haunts the sleep of kings. Both interpretations are correct. She is the great queen because she holds the power of sovereignty. She is the phantom queen because she enforces that sovereignty through terror, magic, and death. In the Labor Gabala Erin, she is often listed alongside her sisters, Badb and Macha. Sometimes, the text names the 3 daughters of Ernmas as Badb, Macha, and Anand, and explicitly states that Anand is the Morrigan. At other times, the Morrigan is the singular title for the collective triad. This trinity is not like the Christian trinity of Father, Son, and Spirit, nor is it the simple neo-pagan maiden, mother, and crone. The sisters of the Morrigan are 3 aspects of war and dominion, each terrifying in her own specific way. Let us look at these faces before they merge into the singular shadow of the Morrigan. First, there is Badb. Her name means crow or raven. She is the Badb Catha, the battle crow. She is the aspect of the goddess who flies over the battlefield, screeching, driving warriors into a frenzy of fear. She is the confusion of combat, the moment when the shield wall breaks and panic sets in. The ancient Irish warriors believed that the crows feasting on the fallen were not merely birds, but the manifestations of the Badb, picking the eyes from the dead to ensure they could not find their way to the afterlife, or perhaps simply claiming her due. When you hear the cawing of a crow in a desolate field, you are hearing the voice of Badb. Then there is Macha. Her name is associated with the pasture, the field, and the horse. She is the land that is tamed and used, but she is also the wild power of the horse that can trample a man to dust. Macha is often associated with the sovereignty of Ulster and the consequences of disrespecting the feminine divine. There are several Machas in mythology, but they all bleed into one another. The wife who outruns the king's horses while pregnant, dying as she gives birth to twins, and cursing the men of Ulster to suffer the pains of labor in their hour of greatest need. Macha represents the physical earth and its connection to kingship. If the king fails to respect Macha, the land rebels. The earth becomes hard, the cattle die, and the kingdom falls. And then there is Anand, or Nemain. Nemain means panic, or frenzy. She is the venomous spirit of war. She is the berserker rage that overtakes a soldier, turning him into a beast who knows no friend or foe. She is the scream that shatters the courage of an army. When the text says, Anand is the Morrigan, it suggests that the core identity of this goddess is rooted in this primal, overwhelming intensity. She is the adrenaline spike of survival and the madness of slaughter. When the Tuatha Dé Danann arrived in Ireland, they did not find an empty land. They found the Fir Bolg, and it is here, in the prelude to the first Battle of Moytura, that we see the Morrigan's power begin to manifest. She does not fight with a sword and shield like the male gods Nuada or Ogma. Her weapons are sorcery and psychology. The texts tell us that she went to the magicians and druids of the Tuatha Dé Danann and helped them craft the great mists and showers of fire and blood that rained down upon the Fir Bolg. Imagine the psychological warfare of the ancient world. The Fir Bolg are standing in their forts, gripping their spears made of heavy wood and dull metal. They look up, and the sky bleeds, not metaphorically. Thick, viscous drops of red rain fall upon their faces, staining their tunics, smelling of iron. Then comes the fire. Phantom flames that seem to consume the air itself, and through it all, the voice of the Morrigan. She stood on the hillsides and chanted poetry. In the Celtic tradition, a poem, a satire, or a curse, was not just words. It was a physical weapon. A true poet could raise blisters on a man's face with a rhyme. The Morrigan's poetry could liquefy the bowels of an army. She sang of their doom, of their broken bones, of their end. But why does she do this? Is she simply a monster who enjoys bloodshed? To think so is to miss the point of her existence. The Morrigan is the goddess of sovereignty. In the ancient Celtic worldview, the land of Ireland was a goddess. The king was merely her spouse. The inauguration ceremony of a high king was called the Banais Rigi, the wedding of the king. He symbolically married the land. If he was a good king, strong, just, and generous, the goddess accepted him. The harvest would be rich, the weather mild, and the cattle fat. This was the truth of the king, but if he was weak, false, or cowardly, the land would reject him, the crops would fail, the borders would be breached. The Morrigan is the mechanism of that selection. She tests the heroes and the kings. She challenges them. She appears as a hag, a beautiful maiden, or a washing woman, always testing their resolve, their generosity, and their courage. If they fail, she destroys them without mercy, for a weak king means the death of the land. She is the evolutionary pressure of the divine world. She prunes the weak branches so the tree of Ireland may survive. War, in her eyes, is not a tragedy. It is a necessity. It is the crucible in which the worthy are separated from the unworthy. As the Tuatha Dé Danann established their rule over Ireland, pushing the Fir Bolg into the remote islands of the west, the Morrigan settled into the landscape. We can still see her footprints today, if we know where to look. In County Kerry, 2 mountains rise from the earth, rounded and smooth, resembling the breasts of a giantess lying on her back. They are called Dachich Anan, the Paps of Anu. This connects her directly to the land as a mother figure, but a mother of mountains and stone, not a domestic mother of the hearth. Her presence is in the Fulacht Fiad, the ancient cooking pits found across the Irish countryside, often filled with water. Folklore later came to call these the Morrigan's kitchens, or her washing pools. But her greatest test was yet to come. The Tuatha Dé Danann had defeated the Fir Bolg, but a darker, more primordial enemy loomed on the horizon: the Fomorians. If the Tuatha Dé Danann were the gods of light, art, and civilization, the Fomorians were the gods of chaos, blight, and the crushing depths of the sea. They were a monstrous race, often described with misshapen bodies, one arm, one eye, one leg, representing the erratic and destructive forces of nature. They had oppressed Ireland for generations, demanding heavy tributes of grain, milk, and children. The conflict between the Tuatha Dé and the Fomorians would culminate in the Second Battle of Moytura, the Cath Maige Tuaird. And it is in the prelude to this cosmic war that the Morrigan steps out of the shadows and takes center stage, not just as a terrifying phantom, but as a strategic genius and a lover of the greatest of the gods, the Dagda. The relationship between the Morrigan and the Dagda is one of the most fascinating and earthy encounters in all of mythology. The Dagda is the good god, not morally good, but good at everything. He is the all-father figure, a god of immense abundance, strength, and druidic power. He wears a tunic that is too short for him, dragging a massive club that can kill 9 men with one end and restore them to life with the other. He is a rough, potent father figure of the earth. The story goes that it is Samhain, the time when the veils between the worlds are thinnest. The Dagda is traveling north to spy on the Fomorians, to gauge their strength before the inevitable war. He arrives at the river Unshin in Connacht. The river is swollen, the noise of the water filling the glen. And there, standing in the middle of the river, straddling the rushing water, is a woman. She is washing. This is a recurring motif that we must pay close attention to. The woman washing at the ford is the omen of death, but here it is also a preparation for war. She is washing the bloody armor and chariots of the armies that are about to fight. The Dagda recognizes her. It is the Morrigan, but she is not in her guise as a hag or a crow. She is a figure of immense, terrifying beauty and power. The text tells us that the Dagda and the Morrigan unite there, in the bed of the river. This union is not a romance in the modern sense. It is a ritual. It is the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage. The Dagda, representing the strength and leadership of the tribe, unites with the Morrigan, representing the sovereignty and the magical power of the land. By lying with her, he secures the support of the land itself for the coming battle. The location of this union is traditionally called the bed of the couple, and the cave of the Morrigan is nearby. Following their union, the Morrigan does not whisper sweet nothings. She whispers military intelligence. This is the practical nature of the Celtic gods. She tells the Dagda exactly where the Fomorians will land. She tells him where to engage them. She promises him that she will go into the battle herself and break the heart of the Fomorian king, Indek. She tells him she will drain the blood from the heart of the enemy king and give the kidneys of the enemy to the Tuatha Dé Danann. It is a gruesome, visceral promise. She effectively tells him, "Because you have joined with me, I will give you the victory. I will act as the terror that breaks their line." This moment at the river defines the Morrigan's role in the celestial hierarchy. She is independent. She is not the wife of the Dagda in a domestic sense. She is his equal and his partner in the business of war. She roams where she pleases. She has her own hall, her own cattle, her own agenda. She is a goddess who cannot be owned or tamed. Even the great All-Father must meet her on her own terms, in the cold water of the river, under the gray sky of Samhain. As we visualize the Morrigan in these early myths, we must strip away the Victorian romanticism that often colors our view of fairies and Celtic deities. The Tuatha Dé Danann were not tiny creatures with butterfly wings. They were tall, terrifyingly beautiful, and dangerous. And the Morrigan was the most dangerous of them all because she operated on the boundaries. She existed in the liminal spaces, the ford of the river, between land and water, the twilight, between day and night, and the Samhain festival, between the living and the dead. The concept of liminality is key to unlocking her mystery. In ancient Ireland, boundaries were places of power. A border between two chieftains' lands was a place where magic could happen. A coastline was a gateway to the other world. The Morrigan is the guardian of these thresholds. She stands at the gate of life and death and demands a toll. When the Tuatha Dé Danann prepared to fight the Fomorians, they were effectively fighting to establish order over chaos. The Fomorians represented the wild, destructive ocean and the blight that rots the corn. The Tuatha Dé represented civilization, art, and law. The Morrigan, interestingly, bridges this gap. She uses the chaotic powers of panic and shape-shifting to defend the order of the Tuatha Dé. She fights fire with fire. She uses terror to protect the tribe. This paradox makes her uncomfortable for many. We want our good gods to be pure and light-filled. We want Lugh of the long arm with his shining spear. But the Celts knew that Lugh was not enough. You needed the shadow. You needed the nightmare. You needed the Morrigan to fly over the enemy and scream, to remind them that death was coming. Her appearance in the texts is protean, ever-changing. In one breath, she is a young woman of stunning beauty, tempting a hero. In the next, she is an old crone, a cailleach, with gray hair and a beak-like nose, leaning on a staff. In another, she is a heifer, a wolf, or an eel. And most famously, she is the hooded crow. This shape-shifting is not just a magic trick. It is her nature. She is formless potential. She is the chaotic energy of the battlefield that can shift from victory to defeat in a heartbeat. When a warrior looked up at a crow circling above him, he didn't just see a bird. He wondered, is she watching me? Have I been chosen to die today? This psychological weight is what made her the most feared deity in the pantheon. You could bargain with the Dagda. You could pray to Nuada. But you could only hope to survive the Morrigan. She was the wind that blew out the candle. She was the sudden chill in the room. We must also consider her relationship to the Sidhe, the fairy mounds. When the Tuatha Dé Danann were eventually defeated by the Milesians, the ancestors of the modern Irish, they did not leave Ireland. They went underground. They faded into the hills and the ancient burial mounds, becoming the Aos Sidhe, the people of the mounds. The Morrigan, too, retreated into the shadows, but she never became a fairy godmother. She remained a figure of dread. Her home, the Oweynagat, Cave of the Cats, in County Roscommon, was known as the Hell Gate of Ireland. It was believed to be a direct passage to the other world, a place from which strange and terrible creatures would emerge on Halloween. We will explore this cave deeply in the final chapter of our journey, but it is important to know that from the very beginning, she was associated with the hollow places of the earth, the womb-like caves that were also tombs. In this first part of our descent into the myth, we have established the groundwork. We have met the Phantom Queen in the mist. We have seen her arrive in the dark clouds that blinded the sun. We have understood that she is a triple goddess of war, sovereignty, and prophecy, Badb, Macha, and Anand. We have seen her wash the armor at the ford and unite with the Dagda to secure the future of her people. But the war is just beginning. The Fomorians are gathering their strength. The giant Baler of the Evil Eye is preparing to unleash his destructive gaze, and the Morrigan has a prophecy to fulfill. She has promised to break the heart of a king. As we move forward into the carnage of the Battle of Moytura, we will see exactly how the Great Queen keeps her promises. We will see the magic of the battlefield, where blood turns to mist, and the scream of a woman can kill a man where he stands. The mist is clearing, but the river is rising. The washing has begun, and the crows are gathering on the standing stones, waiting for the feast. The silence of the ancient world is about to be shattered by the sound of the first great war of the gods, and standing at the precipice, wrapped in a cloak of red feathers, is the Morrigan. She is smiling, for the harvest of souls is about to begin. The number 3 is the most sacred and potent architecture in the Celtic imagination. If you look at the artifacts pulled from the peat bogs and the riverbeds of Europe, you will see it repeated endlessly. The Triskel, the triple spiral carved into the entrance stone of New Grange, spinning inwards and outwards simultaneously. The three-faced stone heads found in ancient sanctuaries, looking past, present, and future. The Druidic triads, the three-lined poems that held the legal and moral wisdom of a culture that refused to write its secrets down. In the Celtic world, 1 is solitude, 2 is conflict, but 3 is balance, 3 is power, 3 is the truth. And so, when we approach the Morrigan, we are not approaching a solitary throne. We are entering a hall of mirrors. We are meeting a goddess who is a prism, refracting the singular white light of sovereignty into 3 distinct, terrifying colors. We have spoken of her origins in the mist, but now we must perform an anatomy of this divinity. We must look at the 3 faces she wears, Badb, Macha, and Anand, and understand how they function not just as characters in a story, but as the gears in the great machine of life and death. This is not the sanitized maiden, mother, and crone of modern romanticism. That is too soft, too linear for the Iron Age. The Morrigan's triad does not represent the stages of a woman's life. It represents the stages of a kingdom's survival. It is the anatomy of sovereignty. Let us begin with the first face, the Badb, the Bad Catha, the battle crow. To the ancient Irish warrior, the crow was not merely a scavenger. It was the physical manifestation of the battlefield's memory. While the eagle flies high, detached and majestic, and the hawk strikes with clean precision, the crow walks among the dead. It is intelligent, social, and communicative. It watches, and when the Badb descends, she is the aspect of the Morrigan that deals with the psychology of fear. In the primary texts, the Badb is often the one who instigates the conflict. She is the agitator. She flies over the armies before a single spear is thrown, and she screams. This scream is not just noise, it is a weapon. In Old Irish, there is a concept known as the boidan, the panic that seizes a multitude. The Badb is the sower of this panic. She lands on the shield rim of a chieftain and whispers the inevitability of his death. She breaks the hero's light, the lon laith, that divine frenzy that protects a warrior. When the Badb is present, the line between bravery and madness blurs. She is also the prophetic washer. We will see this image recur throughout the saga of the Morrigan, but it is the Badb who is most often associated with the ford of the Badb. A warrior walking to battle might come across a woman at a river crossing. She is weeping, her tears falling into the water, and she is washing armor. When the warrior looks closer, he sees that the armor she is scrubbing is his own, and the water is running red with blood. The Badb does not fight with a sword. She fights with the terrifying certainty of fate. She tells you that you are already dead, and in doing so, she ensures your defeat. She is the psychological shadow that hangs over every soldier, the nagging doubt that says, you will not return home. If the Badb is the air, the scream, and the mind, then the second face is the earth, the flesh, the land. This is Macha. Macha is perhaps the most tragic and complex of the three. While Badb is distant and terrifying, Macha is intimately connected to the human experience, to the soil, and to the concept of kingship. Her name is etymologically linked to the plain, or the pasture. She is the wealth of the land, the cattle, the horses, the grass. But she is also the enforcement of the contract between the king and the land. To understand Macha, and to understand why the Morrigan is so often angry with the heroes of Ulster, we must tell one of the most significant stories in Irish mythology, the debility of the Ulstermen, Noindan Ulad. This story is the key that unlocks the tragedy of the Táin. It explains why, when the armies of the West invade, the great warriors of the North are lying in their beds, screaming in the pains of childbirth, unable to lift a sword. The story begins not with a god, but with a widower, a wealthy landowner in Ulster named Cúailnge. He lives a quiet life in the solitary hills. One day, a woman appears at his door. She is tall, beautiful, and silent. She enters his house without a word. She begins to perform the duties of the household. She kneads the dough. She tends the hearth. She organizes his life. That night, she enters his bed. Her name is Macha. She brings him immense prosperity. Under her care, his cattle multiply, his fields flourish, and his heart is healed. But there is a condition, a guise, a taboo. She tells him that their happiness depends on his silence. He must never speak of her to others. He must never boast of her supernatural nature. She is a goddess living a mortal life, grounding herself in the domestic sphere, bringing the blessing of sovereignty to a humble home. But men are proud, and fate is cruel. The time hums for the great fair of Ulster. This is a gathering of the tribes, a place of horse racing, games, and legal judgments, presided over by the King of Ulster, Conchobar mac Nessa. Cúailnge prepares to go. Macha begs him to stay. "If you go," she warns, her hand resting on her swollen belly, for she is heavily pregnant with his children. You will speak of me, and we will be lost." "I will not speak," Cúailnge promises. "I will be silent as the stone." He goes to the fair. The atmosphere is electric. The chariots are gleaming, the horses are snorting, the crowds are cheering. The king's horses are brought out. They are magnificent beasts, faster than the wind, their coats shining like polished copper. They race and they win again and again. The crowd roars in approval. The poets compose verses praising the king's horses, declaring that there is nothing in Ireland swifter than the king's chariot. Cúailnge, drunk on the atmosphere, drunk on mead, and stung by the arrogance of the crowd, forgets his promise. He stands up in the grandstand and shouts, my wife can run faster than the king's horses." Silence descends on the fair. To claim that a human woman, and a pregnant one at that, can outrun the royal steeds is not just a boast. It is an insult to the king. And in the Celtic world, insulting the king is a crime against the state. King Conchobar, a man known for his harsh justice, hears the shout. He orders his guards to seize Cúailnge. "Bring the woman," the king commands. "Let her run. If she wins, the man lives. If she loses, or if she does not come, he dies." Messengers are sent to the hills. They find Macha at the hearth. They tell her of her husband's foolishness and the king's decree. She pleads with them. "I am with child," she says. "My time is near. I cannot run." "Then your husband dies," the messengers reply. Macha goes with them. She walks into the assembly of the men of Ulster. She stands before the king, her belly heavy with life, her face pale with pain and fury. She appeals to the crowd. She asks for a delay. "Let me deliver my children," she begs. "After I have given birth, I will run." But the crowd, caught up in the bloodlust and the spectacle, jeers. The king refuses. "Run now," he says, "or he dies." This is the failure of kingship. The role of the king is to protect the land and the mothers. Here, the king is forcing the embodiment of sovereignty to degrade herself for his amusement. He is breaking the contract. Macha looks at the men of Ulster. She looks at the king, and her eyes change. The domestic wife vanishes, and the goddess returns. "Because you have no mercy," she says, her voice trembling with a power that shakes the wooden stands. "Evil will come of this. I will run." She lines up against the chariot. The horses are whipped. They thunder down the track, hooves tearing up the earth. And Macha runs. She runs not with the speed of an athlete, but with the terrifying speed of the wind. She runs through the agony of her contractions. She races the beasts, her hair flying like a banner of war behind her. She reaches the finish line. She beats the horses. But as she crosses the line, she collapses. There, in the dust of the racecourse, amidst the shocked silence of the men, she screams. It is a scream of agony, but also a scream of creation. She gives birth to twins, a boy and a girl, and from this blood and pain, she pronounces her curse. "From this hour," she gasps, "the shame you have inflicted on me will fall upon you. Whenever you are in your greatest danger, whenever the enemies of Ulster stand at your borders, you will be seized by the pains of a woman in childbirth. You will be as weak as I am now. For 5 days and 4 nights, the warriors of Ulster will be helpless. This shall last for 9 generations. This is the Ches Noendan, the debility. And the place is named Emain Macha, the twins of Macha, the capital of Ulster. The Morrigan, in her guise as Macha, has judged the king and found him wanting. She has punished the patriarchy of the tribe by forcing them to experience the vulnerability of the feminine. This is the justice of the Morrigan. It is harsh, it is ironic, and it is absolute. Then there is the third face, Anand, sometimes called Nemain. If Badb is the mind, and Macha is the body, Anand is the spirit, but a spirit of pure venomous chaos. The texts explicitly state Anand is the Morrigan, suggesting that this aspect is the core of her divinity. Anand is the frenzy. In the heat of battle, there is a moment when tactics dissolve, when the shield wall breaks, when the formations shatter, and there is only the red haze of slaughter. This is the domain of Nemain. Her name means the venomous one, or the taker. She is the aspect of the Morrigan that kills not with a spear, but with fear itself. There are accounts in the Táin where the Morrigan/Nemain appears above the armies, and 100 warriors fall dead simply from the sound of her voice. Their hearts stop. Their minds snap. This is distinct from the panic of the Badb. The Badb makes you run. Nemain makes you die of fright. She is the presence of the uncanny, the eldritch terror that cannot be rationalized. She is the face of war that is stripped of all glory. There is no honor in Nemain's domain. There is only the shaking of the hands, the void in the stomach, and the darkness. Nemain is also associated with the poisoning of the land and the mind. She represents the total war concept, where the very water becomes undrinkable and the air becomes unbreathable because of the presence of the divine wrath. She is the reminder that war is an abomination, a tearing of the fabric of reality. So, how do these three coexist? They are not 3 women sitting in a room arguing. They are a singular force that shifts according to the need of the moment. When the king needs a mate to validate his rule, she is Macha. When the army needs intelligence and strategy, she is Badb. When the enemy needs to be broken by terror, she is Nemain/Anand. They are the triple descent of the divine into the mortal world, and they share common symbols that bind them together. The most potent of these is the crow or raven. The crow is the totem of the Morrigan because it is a creature of the threshold. It walks on the earth, it swims in the air, and it eats the dead. It transforms death into life. By eating the fallen warrior, the crow takes his strength back into the sky. It recycles the energy of the battle. Another shared symbol is the heifer, the cow. We often think of cows as docile, but the ancient Irish knew the wildness of the cattle. A cow defending her calf is a terrifying force. The Morrigan often appears as a white heifer with red ears. In Celtic mythology, white animals with red ears are always creatures from the other world. The red symbolizes the blood of life and death. The white symbolizes the supernatural origin. When the Morrigan appears as a cow, she is the sovereignty of the land, the source of milk and wealth, but one that can lead the herd into a stampede that crushes cities. As we prepare to leave the anatomy of the goddess and return to the narrative of the great wars, we must hold this complexity in our minds. The Morrigan is not a villain. In the modern mind, we see death and war as evil, but to the ancients, they were inevitable. The Morrigan is the immune system of the mythical landscape. She attacks the infection. She burns out the fever. When Macha cursed the men of Ulster, she was not being evil. She was restoring the balance that the king had broken. She was teaching a lesson written in pain, that the strength of a warrior is nothing without respect for the source of life. Now, the stage is set. The nature of the player is revealed. She is the terror, the land, and the frenzy. The Tuatha Dé Danann are preparing for their ultimate test against the Fomorians at Moytura. The Dagda is sharpening his club. Luke is practicing his spear cast, but they cannot win with steel alone. They need the magic of the riverbed. They need the washing at the ford. They need the Phantom Queen to open her wings and block out the sun. The prophecy is spoken. The bed of the couple awaits. And the Morrigan is about to show the world that while men may fight the battles, it is the goddess who decides the victor. The crows are taking flight. Can you hear the beating of their wings? It sounds like the coming of a storm. The wheel of the year turns. The bright days of summer fade. The leaves rot into the mud, and the festival of Samhain approaches. In the mythological history of Ireland, this is not merely a harvest festival. It is the cosmic hinge upon which the fate of gods and men turns. We have spoken of the Morrigan's faces, and we have spoken of the curse laid upon Ulster. But long before the heroes of the Red Branch walked the earth, there was the Great War. The war that would decide who held the soul of the island, the gods of art and light, or the gods of chaos and darkness. The second Battle of Moytura is the centerpiece of the mythological cycle. It is a sprawling, chaotic, and magical narrative found in the manuscript Harleian 5280. But if you strip away the lists of names and the intricate descriptions of weaponry, at its heart, it is a story about the relationship between the earth and the ruler. And standing at the absolute center of this relationship, standing knee-deep in the freezing water of the river Unshin, is the Morrigan. To understand the stakes, we must look at the enemy. The Fomorians were not merely invaders, they were the old oppression. Under the rule of Bress, a king who was half Fomorian and half Tuatha Dé, but who lacked the generosity of a true king, Ireland had suffered. The gods were reduced to laborers. The Ogma was forced to carry firewood. The Dagda was forced to dig trenches. The land had stopped yielding. The Fomorians, led by the terrifying Baelor of the Evil Eye, whose gaze could destroy armies, and the King Indach, sought to return Ireland to a state of primordial servitude. The Tuatha Dé Danann rebelled. They gathered at the hill of Tara. Luch of the Long Arm, the master of all arts, took command. But Luch knew that swords and spears were not enough against the raw elemental power of the Fomorians. To defeat chaos, you need more than order. You need the power of the earth itself. You need the sovereignty. And so the Dagda, the All-Father of the Tuatha Dé, sets out. The text of the Cath Maige Tuairad gives us a specific date. It is Samhain. This detail is crucial. Samhain is the liminal time, the no time between the old year and the new. It is the only time when such a meeting could take place. The Dagda travels north, towards the camp of the enemy. but he is intercepted. He arrives at the ford of the river Unshin in the territory of Coran. The scenery described in the myths is desolate and wild. The river is swollen with the autumn rains, rushing over the gray stones, creating a noise like 1,000 whispering voices. And there, washing in the river, is a woman. This is the second time we see the washer motif, but it is distinctly different from the weeping hag we will meet later. The text describes her with a visceral, almost terrifying specificity. She stands with one foot on the bank of the river and the other foot on the bank across the water, a stance of immense, giant-like proportion, symbolizing her dominance over the landscape. She is washing, but she is not washing clothes. She is washing herself, preparing for the great act of magic. The text tells us she has 9 loosened tresses of hair flowing down her back. In Celtic numerology, 9 is the number of completion and magic. 3 times 3. She is the Morrigan. The Dagda approaches her. He is a god of immense appetite, for food, for battle, and for life. He carries his great club, the Lorg Mor, which leaves a furrow in the earth deep enough to be a boundary ditch. He sees her not as a monster, but as the supreme power of the land. What follows is the union of the Dagda and the Morrigan. The place where they lay together is named in the Din Shenshas, the lore of places, as Leaba Nalanamhna, the bed of the couple. It is also said to be near the cave of the Morrigan. We must tread carefully here to understand the ancient mindset. This was not a romantic subplot. This was a magical working. It was the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage. By uniting with the Morrigan at the ford on the eve of battle, the Dagda was tying the fate of the Tuatha Dé Danann to the fate of Ireland. He was securing the battery power of the land for his people. It was a strategic alliance sealed with the body. When they separate, the dynamic shifts immediately. The lover vanishes. The war goddess remains. The Morrigan speaks to the Dagda, and her words are pure military intelligence. She does not offer comfort. She offers coordinates. "Where will the Fomorians land?" the Dagda asks. "They will land at Macha, she replies. "They will march to the plain of pillars." She gives him the time and the place. But then she makes a promise that reveals the true nature of her magic. She tells the Dagda that she herself will enter the battle. She says, "I will kill Indek, the son of Dé Danann, the king of the Fomorians. I will deprive him of the blood of his heart and the kidneys of his valor." This specific imagery, the kidneys of valor, is strange to the modern ear, but in the ancient physiological understanding, the kidneys and the heart were the seats of strength and courage. Later in the myth, after the battle, the Morrigan presents the Dagda with 2 handfuls of blood and the kidneys of the enemy king. She has not just killed him. She has ritually dismantled his power. She has harvested the essence of the chaotic king and offered it to the righteous one. The Dagda returns to his people with this knowledge. The armies gather on the plain of Moytura. The scene is set for the clash of titans. The battle begins. It is a conflict of noise and horror. The Cath Maige Tuaird describes the sound. There was no distinctive noise there, but a roaring and a buzzing and a crashing. It was the sound of the universe tearing apart. The Fomorians are heavy, brutal, relying on brute strength. The Tuatha Dé Danann are agile, magical, relying on the arts. But where is the Morrigan? She is everywhere. Unlike Nuada, who leads from the front with his sword, or Lugh, who casts his spear from the rear, the Morrigan permeates the battlefield. She is the atmosphere of the war. The text says, "The Morrigan, the daughter of Ernmas, came, and she was strengthening the Tuatha Dé Danann, and she was chanting a poem to them." This is the role of the Banshee, the woman poet. In the Iron Age, a chant was a sonic weapon. She rises above the heads of the warriors, perhaps in the form of a storm cloud, perhaps as a flock of crows, or perhaps as a giantess striding through the gore. She sings, "Kings arise to the battle. Badb is thankful. Harvests are bloody. Bone-breaking is loud." Her voice cuts through the din of steel. She is inciting the Ferg, the anger, in the hearts of the Tuatha Dé. She is driving them into the state of Rhiastrad, the battle spasm where fear is forgotten. At the same time, she is casting her fog over the Fomorians. She rains down showers of blood and fire upon their heads. Imagine the terror of the Fomorian soldiers. They are fighting skilled swordsmen, yes, but they are also fighting the sky. The clouds are bleeding on them. The mist is choking them. They are fighting the land they are trying to conquer. The climax of the battle is well known. Lugh kills Balor with a sling stone through the eye. But the rout, the driving of the enemy into the sea, is the work of the Morrigan. She chases them. She pursues the remnants of the Fomorian army all the way to the coast, screaming her poetry at their backs, ensuring that they do not just retreat, but that they leave the island forever. She is the immune response of Ireland expelling the virus. The battle is won. The dead lie in heaps. The Fomorians are broken. The Tuatha Dé Danann are the undisputed masters of Ireland. But the myth does not end with a celebration. It ends with a poem. And this poem, spoken by the Morrigan on the summit of a mountain after the slaughter, is one of the most haunting and significant passages in all of Celtic literature. She stands on a high peak, looking out over the smoking battlefield, over the bodies of gods and giants. She addresses the mountains, the rivers, and the estuary. She is proclaiming the victory of order. She speaks of a golden age, peace up to heaven, heaven down to earth, earth under heaven, strength in everyone. She describes a world where honey is in every flower, where spears are set upon shields, meaning they are not used, where the cattle are fat and the people are just. It is a vision of perfect sovereignty, the result of the righteous war she has just orchestrated. It is the promise that the blood was worth it. But then the tone shifts. The Morrigan is not a goddess of eternal summer. She knows that the wheel must turn. She knows that order inevitably decays back into chaos. She looks further into the future, past the victory of the Tuatha Dé, past the coming of the Milesians, to the very end of time. She speaks a second prophecy, and this one is the prophecy of the apocalypse. I shall not see a world that will be dear to me, summer without flowers, Kine, cattle without milk, women without modesty, men without valor, captures without a king. She describes a world where the seasons are broken, summer without flowers. In an agricultural society, this is death. No flowers means no bees, no fruit, no harvest. She describes a collapse of the social order, women without modesty, men without valor. She describes a world of endless, meaningless conflict. Woods without mast, sea without produce. Evil judgments of old men. False precedents of the lawgivers. Every man a betrayer, every boy a thief. The son will enter the bed of his father. The father will enter the bed of his son. It is a terrifying vision of moral and ecological collapse. She predicts a time when the sacred bonds of kinship are shattered, when the earth itself becomes sterile, and when society eats itself alive. An evil time. The son will kill the father. The daughter will kill the mother. And she ends with a single, chilling word. Fauchmark, which can be translated as I ask it, or who will ask, or simply the end. Why does the myth end this way? Why does the goddess of victory predict the ultimate defeat? Because the Morrigan is the truth. She is the cold, hard reality of the cosmos. She knows that the Tuatha Dé Danann will not rule forever. She knows that even the gods will fade. She understands that sovereignty is a cycle of rising and falling. By speaking this prophecy, she is not just predicting the end, she is accepting it. She is acknowledging that the golden age she helped create is finite. This duality, the creator of peace and the prophet of doom, is what makes her so terrifyingly complete. She is not lying to us. She offers us the victory, but she reminds us that winter is always coming. After the Battle of Moytura, the Tuatha Dé Danann rule for a long age, but eventually the sons of Meal, the Milesians, the ancestors of the modern Irish, arrive from Spain. The Tuatha Dé Danann fade. They retreat into the hollow hills, becoming the Shethi. The great gods like the Dagda and Nuada become dim memories or fairy kings. But the Morrigan does not fade. She does not retire to a fairy mound to dance in the moonlight. She remains active. She remains visceral, because as long as there are kings in Ireland, and as long as there is war, she is needed. She shifts her attention from the gods to the men. The age of the demigods and heroes begins. The focus of the mythology moves from the cosmic battles of Moytura to the tribal cattle raids of Ulster. A new power is rising in the north. A boy is born who will be the greatest killer and the greatest protector the island has ever seen. His name is Setanta, but the world will know him as Cú Chulainn. The Morrigan has watched the gods fight. Now, she wants to see what a mortal can do. She turns her gaze toward the Red Branch Knights. She sees the young hound of Ulster, and in him, she sees a potential equal, a force of nature wrapped in human skin. But Cú Chulainn is proud. He is arrogant, and he does not know that you do not say no to the great queen. The mist of Moytura clears, revealing the green fields of Cooley. A brown bull grazes on the hillside, unaware that his existence will start a war that will soak the province in blood. And perched on a standing stone, watching the bull, watching the boy, is the crow. She is hungry again. The Táin is about to begin. And for Cú Chulainn, the test of the Morrigan will not be a washing in the river. It will be a seduction, a rejection, and a vengeance that will hunt him to his grave. We leave the age of the gods behind. We enter the age of the hero. But the goddess remains the same. The fire has burned low. The smoke from the Battle of Moytura has drifted away, carried off by the winds of centuries. The great gods, The Dagda with his club, Nuada with his silver arm, and Luke with his shining spear have retreated. They have not left Ireland, for the gods never truly leave, but they have gone into the hollow hills. They have become the Sidhe, the invisible people who feast inside the earth while mortals walk upon the grass. The age of the gods is over. The age of men has begun. But the Morrigan does not sleep in the hollow hills. She does not fade into a whisper in the wind. She remains awake. She remains hungry. For she knows that the nature of the world has not changed. Only the players have. The struggle for sovereignty, for the right to rule the land and command its fertility, continues. It has merely shifted from the cosmic scale of deities to the brutal, bloody, and tragically human scale of tribal warfare. We are now entering the Ulster cycle. This is the era of the Red Branch Knights, the era of iron chariots, head-hunting, and the warp spasm. And at the center of this era stands the greatest epic in Irish literature, the Táin Bó Cúailnge, the cattle raid of Cooley. To the modern mind, a war fought over a bull might seem trivial. We are used to wars fought for oil, for ideology, or for territory. But in the Iron Age Celtic world, cattle were not just livestock. They were the currency of the soul. A king's power was measured by the size of his herd. A poet's honor price was paid in milk cows. To possess a great bull was to possess the virility of the kingdom itself. And the Táin begins not with a declaration of war, but with a conversation in a bedroom. It is one of the most famous scenes in mythology, known as the pillow talk. Imagine a royal bedchamber in the fortress of Rathcrogan, in the western province of Connaught. The room is hung with heavy furs and tapestries. The air is thick with the smell of roasted meat and mead. In the great bed lie two monarchs, Queen Badb and her husband, Ailill. Badb is a force of nature. She is not merely a queen. Many scholars believe she is, like the Morrigan, a euhemerized goddess of sovereignty. Her name means the intoxicating one, or she who makes men drunk. She is fierce, promiscuous, wealthy, and infinitely ambitious. Ailill is her husband, a king in his own right, but he rules only because he is married to her. They begin to boast. It starts as a playful comparison of wealth. "I am richer than you," Ailill says. "No," says Badb, "I am the wealthier one." They decide to prove it. They order their servants to bring forth all their possessions. It is a catalogue of excess. They bring out their gold rings, their jeweled brooches, their fine linens. They match perfectly. They bring out their flocks of sheep. They match perfectly. They bring out their herds of horses and swine. Count for count, beast for beast, they are equal. Then they bring out the cattle. The herds of Connaught are driven past the fortress. They are vast, a sea of horns and hides. But in Ailill's herd there is a magnificent beast, the white-horned bull, Finn Venach. He is a creature of immense power and beauty. He had been born into Badb's herd, but the text tells us that he deemed it unworthy to belong to a woman, and so he had wandered into the herd of the king. Badb has no bull to match him. Her wealth is vast, her armies are strong, but in this one symbolic measure of sovereignty, she is lesser than her husband, and for Medb, to be lesser is to be nothing. She summons her steward. "Is there a bull in Ireland," she asks, "that is the equal of the white-horned?" "There is," the steward replies. "In the province of Ulster, in the district of Cooley, there is a bull. He is called the Táin Bó Cúailnge, the brown bull of Cooley. This bull is not an ordinary animal. Like the white-horned, he is a reincarnated soul, one of 2 divine swineherds who have fought each other through various shapes for generations. He is vast, dark, and terrifying. When he bellows, the cows of the province instantly drop their calves in fear. He is the raw, untamed power of the north. Medb decides she must have him. She tries diplomacy first, offering gold and favors. But negotiations break down due to the drunkenness and arrogance of her messengers. Diplomacy fails. War is the only option. She gathers the armies of the 4 great provinces of Ireland, Connacht, Munster, Leinster, and Meath, to march against the 5th province, Ulster. But why Ulster? And where is the Morrigan in this gathering storm? The Morrigan is watching. She knows that the men of Ulster are currently under the curse of Macha, the Ches Nowinden we spoke of earlier. As the armies of Medb gather, the great warriors of the Red Branch, Conshobar, Fergus, Conall Cernach, are struck down by the phantom pains of childbirth. They are incapacitated. They lie in their fortress at Emain Macha, groaning, unable to lift a spear. The province is defenseless, or so it seems. There is one person in Ulster who is immune to the curse, a boy of 17 years. He is immune because he is not fully of Ulster. His father is the god Lugh of the Long Arm. He is the semi-divine protector of the border. His name is Cú Chulainn. To speak of the Morrigan in the Táin is to speak of her obsession with Cú Chulainn. He is the ultimate predator. He is described as a beautiful youth, small and slight. But when the Riastrad, the warp spasm, takes him, he transforms into a monstrosity. His muscles bulge and rotate under his skin. One eye sucks into his skull while the other protrudes like a cauldron, and a hero's light burns from his forehead. He is the human equivalent of the Morrigan's own destructive nature. The Morrigan senses him. She senses the impending slaughter. She knows that this boy will be the anvil upon which the armies of Ireland will be broken, and so she moves. Her first appearance in the Táin is often debated, but in many versions she appears to the brown bull himself. She flies to Cooley in the form of a bird, a crow or a blackbird, and perches on a standing stone near the great beast. She speaks to the bull. She warns him. Restless is the cow. The raven croaks. Men are coming. Slaughter is coming. She incites the bull to run, to flee into the dark glens, making him harder to capture. She is already stirring the pot, ensuring that the conflict will be long and bloody. She wants the war. She feeds on the chaos. But her primary interest is the boy. The armies of Medb cross the border. They find the land empty, the warriors disabled. But at every ford, at every river crossing, they find their scouts dead, beheaded, tied to standing stones. Cú Chulainn is fighting a guerrilla war. He is holding off the entire army of Ireland single-handedly, invoking the sacred laws of single combat. He demands that they send only one champion at a time to fight him at the ford. Day after day, he kills. The river runs red. He is exhausted, sleepless, covered in gore. It is in this state of exhaustion and heightened adrenaline that the Morrigan comes to him, but she does not come as a crow. She does not come as a hag. She comes as a temptation. Cú Chulainn is standing at the ford, washing the blood from his sword. He looks up and sees a chariot approaching. But this is not a war chariot. It is a vehicle of stunning beauty, drawn by a horse with a red mane. And in the chariot sits a woman. She is described as the most beautiful woman in the world. She is wrapped in a multicolored cloak of red, crimson, and gold. Her hair is elaborate, her jewelry heavy and precious. She looks like a high queen, or perhaps a goddess of the Sidhe. She stops the chariot. She looks down at the blood-stained 17-year-old killer standing in the water. "I have come to you," she says, her voice like honey and smoke. "Who are you?" Cú Chulainn asks, his hand tightening on his spear. He is suspicious. He is tired. He has no time for riddles. "I am the daughter of King Buan, the eternal king," she lies. "I have heard of your fame. I have heard of your great deeds, your strength, and your beauty. I have brought you my treasures. I have brought you my cattle. I have come to love you." This is the offer of sovereignty. It is the same offer the Morrigan made to the Dagda at the river Unshin. She is offering him her power. If he accepts her, he accepts the aid of the goddess. She will fight beside him. She will protect him. She will make him a king. But Cú Chulainn is not the Dagda. The Dagda was a god of wisdom and earthiness who understood the necessity of the feminine power. Cú Chulainn is a young, arrogant warrior who believes in the supremacy of his own spear. He is the archetypal tragic hero, brilliant but flawed by his own hubris. He looks at her with disdain. "It is a bad time you have chosen to come," he snaps. "I am exhausted. I am famished. I am engaged in a struggle against the 4 provinces of Ireland. I have no time for women. I have no time for love." The Morrigan presses. "But I can help you," she says. "I can be of great use to you in the battle. I am not just a woman. I am power." Cú Chulainn sneers. "I did not undertake this war for the sake of a woman's hips," he says crudely. "I do not need your help." The silence that follows is heavier than the sky. He has just rejected the goddess of war in the middle of a war. He has rejected the goddess of the land while trying to defend the land. It is a catastrophic spiritual error. The beautiful woman in the chariot begins to fade. The illusion of the king's daughter dissolves. The air grows cold. The shadows lengthen. The figure in the chariot shifts, becoming darker, sharper, more terrifying. "If you reject me," the Morrigan says, her voice now the screech of the crow, "then I will be against you." Cú Chulainn laughs. "You, a woman, what can you do to me?" And then she pronounces her threat. It is a threat in 3 parts, corresponding to her 3 natures. "When you are in the heat of the fight," she hisses, "when you are wrestling with a champion in the deep water of the ford, I will come to you. I will come in the form of a white heifer with red ears. I will lead the cattle stampede into the water. I will trample you and confuse you. I will smash your head with a stone," Cú Chulainn retorts. "I will break your leg." "I will come to you," she continues, in the form of a black, slippery eel. I will swim between your legs while you are fighting. I will trip you and drag you under the water. I will crush your ribs, Cú Chulainn says. I will crack your spine. I will come to you, she finishes, in the form of a rough gray she-wolf. I will tear at your flesh and drive the cattle against you. I will blind you in one eye, Cú Chulainn vows. And hear this, woman. If you attack me, I will mark you. I will wound you, and you will never be healed of those wounds unless I myself bless you. We shall see, she says. And with a beat of wings, she is gone. The chariot vanishes. The beautiful woman is gone. A crow flies up into the gray sky of Ulster, cawing 3 times. Cú Chulainn stands alone in the ford. The water rushes around his ankles. He feels a chill that has nothing to do with the cold water. He tells himself he is not afraid. He is the Hound of Ulster. He fears no man, but he has just made an enemy of the inevitable. This confrontation sets the stage for the rest of the Táin. It transforms the Morrigan's role. She is no longer just the observer or the instigator. She is now an active participant in the duel. She has been scorned. Her offer of sovereignty has been spat upon. Now, she will test the hero to his absolute limit. She will become the obstacles he must overcome. But there is a deeper layer here. By rejecting her, Cú Chulainn has rejected the easy path. Had he accepted her love, perhaps the war would have ended quickly. Perhaps he would have become a great king. But by rejecting her, he chooses the path of the solitary hero, the path of suffering, and ultimately, the path of an early death. The Morrigan accepts this. If she cannot be his lover, she will be his death. For in the logic of the Celtic otherworld, these are 2 sides of the same coin. She is the washer at the ford, and now she has a shirt to wash. The armies of Badb are marching again. The dust cloud rises in the west. The sound of thousands of spears beating against shields fills the air. And somewhere in the darkness, a white heifer is lowing. An eel is coiling in the mud, and a wolf is sharpening its teeth. Cú Chulainn tightens his belt. He checks his spear, the guy Bolga. He steps back into the ford. He is ready for men, but is he ready for the nightmare? The next time they meet, there will be no words. There will only be teeth, claws, and water. The duel at the ford is approaching, and the Morrigan keeps her promises. The air over the ford is heavy with the copper smell of blood and the damp chill of the river mist. The water, usually clear and singing over the stones, has become a churned, muddy soup of violence. Cú Chulainn stands in the center of the stream. He is no longer the beautiful youth who flirted with the idea of war. He is a grotesque monument to exhaustion. His skin is pale, his eyes are sunken, and his body is a map of lacerations and bruises. For days he has stood here. For days he has fought the champions of Connaught, one by one, honoring the ancient laws of the Fir Fir, the truth of men, which dictates single combat. But today is different. The army of Queen Badb is restless. They are tired of waiting for this single boy to die. And from the ranks of the enemy, a new champion emerges. His name is Loch Mac Mophemis. He is a warrior of immense stature, a man who has boasted that he will crush the beardless boy of Ulster before the sun reaches its zenith. Cú Chulainn tightens his grip on his spear. He steps forward to meet Loch, but as he does, he feels a change in the atmosphere. The birds stop singing. The wind drops. A silence falls over the ford that is deeper and colder than the silence of anticipation. It is the silence of the presence of the other. He remembers the threat. I will come to you in the heat of the fight. The duel begins. Swords clash against shields, sparks flying into the gray water. Loch is strong, pressing Cú Chulainn back. The boy hero is fighting for his life. And it is in this moment, when his attention is entirely focused on the blade of his enemy, that the Morrigan strikes. She does not come from the sky. She comes from the herd. Suddenly, a chaotic noise erupts from behind the lines of the Connaught army. The cattle, usually docile, begin to bellow in panic. And charging out of the mass of animals comes a heifer. She is not an ordinary cow. She is a white heifer, sleek and powerful, with ears as red as fresh blood. She is the Findbenach, the white-horned, in female form. And she is not alone. She is leading the entire herd in a stampede directly towards the ford. Imagine the horror of the moment. Cú Chulainn is locked in mortal combat with a giant of a man, and suddenly a wall of thundering hooves and horns is bearing down on him. The Morrigan, in the form of the white heifer, plunges into the water. She does not attack him with teeth. She attacks him with chaos. She drives the herd into the stream, turning the battlefield into a crushing, drowning mosh pit of animal panic. Cú Chulainn is knocked sideways. The water boils around him. Loch sees his advantage and strikes, wounding the boy. Cú Chulainn is fighting on two fronts, against the steel of the man and the crushing weight of the beast. But he is the hound. His reflexes are faster than thought. As the white heifer thrashes past him, trying to trample him into the mud, he lashes out. He does not use his spear. He uses his own body, his own ferocity. He strikes the heifer. The text tells us he breaks her leg. A sickening crack echoes through the ford. The white heifer bellows, a sound that is half animal, half woman, and retreats, limping, dragging her shattered leg out of the water. The herd disperses. Cú Chulainn gasps for air. He has survived the first wave, but he remembers the promise. I will come to you. He turns back to Loch. The duel continues. The water is now calming, the mud settling. But the Morrigan is the master of the elements. She has used the earth, the cattle. Now she uses the water. As Cú Chulainn maneuvers in the deep part of the ford, something brushes against his leg. It is cold, slippery. It is not a fish. It wraps around his calf with the strength of an iron cable. It coils. It tightens. It is a black eel. This is the second form. The Morrigan has become the predator of the depths. She knits herself around Cú Chulainn's legs, binding him, dragging him down. He stumbles. He flails. To the watching armies, it looks as if the boy has simply lost his footing. But Cú Chulainn feels the malice in the coil. He feels the intelligence of the serpent. Loch sees him fall. He raises his sword for the killing blow. Cú Chulainn, lying in the water, choking, trapped by the eel, summons the Riastrad. He swells with rage. He reaches down into the water, grabbing the slimy, muscular body of the eel. He squeezes, he twists, he tramples, he crushes her ribs. The eel releases him, thrashing in agony, her side caved in. She slithers away into the murky depths, leaving a trail of black blood in the water. Cú Chulainn stands up, coughing water from his lungs. He is battered. He is terrified. But he is still standing. Loch is furious. He attacks again. The duel is now a brawl. Cú Chulainn is exhausted. His energy is fading. And then the third wave comes. A howl tears through the air. It is a sound that triggers a primal fear in every human heart. A gray shape blurs from the bank. It is a wolf, a she-wolf, lean, scarred, with eyes of yellow fire. The Morrigan has taken the form of the scavenger hunter. She does not attack Cú Chulainn directly this time. She attacks the cattle again, driving them back into the ford to create confusion. But she snaps at Cú Chulainn's arm, tearing the flesh. She is the distraction that will allow Loch to kill him. Cú Chulainn is blinded by pain and blood. He takes a stone from his sling, or perhaps he uses his spear, and he hurls it at the gray wolf. His aim, even in the chaos, is perfect. The stone strikes the wolf in the eye. The eye bursts. The wolf yelps, blinded, and flees into the scrub. Now, Cú Chulainn is alone with Loch. The distractions are gone. The goddess has thrown everything at him, earth, water, and tooth, and he has broken her leg, crushed her ribs, and blinded her eye. He has defeated the triple goddess. Now he must defeat the man. Filled with the battle fury, Cú Chulainn invokes the guy Bolga. This is his ultimate weapon, the spear that enters as one barb and opens into 30 inside the body. He casts it with his foot through the water. It strikes Loch Mac Mofemas. It destroys him. The giant falls. The ford is won. Cú Chulainn drags himself up the bank. He does not celebrate. He collapses. He is a wreck of a human being. He is thirsty, a thirst so deep it feels like burning sand in his throat. He leans against a standing stone, his chest heaving, his wounds bleeding. The battle is over for the day, but the myth is not. The scene shifts. We move away from the noise of the army, away from the blood-soaked river, to a quiet hillside nearby. The Morrigan has retreated. She is in agony. She is limping, holding her crushed side, blinded in one eye. She is a goddess, yes, but she has taken mortal forms, and she has suffered mortal wounds. And in the peculiar logic of Irish magic, wounds inflicted by Cú Chulainn can only be healed by Cú Chulainn. She needs his blessing, but she knows he will never give it to her knowingly. He hates her. He has just fought her. So she must trick him. She shapeshifts one more time. She does not become a warrior queen or a terrifying monster. She becomes an old woman, a crone. She sits on a milking stool beside a cow. But this is a strange cow. It has 3 teats. She starts to milk the cow. Cú Chulainn, blinded by his thirst, stumbles through the heather. He hears the sound of milk hitting a pail. To a dying man, that sound is sweeter than any music. He follows it. He sees the old woman. He does not recognize the great queen in this humble disguise. He sees only a grandmother with a cow. "Good woman," Cú Chulainn croaks, his voice like dry leaves. Give me a drink of milk. I am perishing of thirst." The Morrigan looks at him with her one good eye. She hands him a vessel of fresh, warm milk. "I will give it to you," she says. Cú Chulainn drinks. Ideally, he drains the cup. The relief is instantaneous. The coolness washes over his parched throat. He sighs with gratitude. "The blessing of the gods and the non-gods be upon you," he says. Instantly, the Morrigan's shoulder, where the white heifer's leg was broken, knits together. The bone snaps back into place. The pain vanishes. She has been healed by his gratitude, but he is still thirsty. "Give me another drink," he begs. She hands him a second cup. He drinks it down. "The blessing of the gods and the non-gods be upon you," he says again. Her ribs, crushed when she was the eel, expand and heal. The bruising fades. Her breath returns. "Give me a third drink," Cú Chulainn asks. "And I will give you a third blessing." She hands him the final cup. He finishes it. He looks at her, his eyes filled with the simple, honest thankfulness of a man saved from death. "The blessing of the gods and the non-gods be upon you," he says for the third time. Her eye, blinded when she was the wolf, clears. The light returns. She is whole again. And then the disguise drops. The old woman stands up. She grows in height. The rags turn into the robes of a queen. The milking stool vanishes. The cow vanishes. And there, standing before the horrified hero, is the Morrigan. She is healed. She is powerful. And she is smiling a cold, triumphant smile. Cú Chulainn stares at her. He realizes what he has done. He has healed his greatest enemy. He has restored the force that tried to kill him. "You told me," Cú Chulainn whispers, "that I would never be healed unless you blessed me." "And you have blessed me," the Morrigan replies, 3 times. "If I had known it was you," Cú Chulainn says, spitting on the ground, "I would never have healed you. I would have let you rot." "But you did not know," she says, "and now we are bound." This moment is the turning point of the entire epic. It changes the nature of their relationship from simple antagonism to a complex, symbiotic destiny. By healing her, Cú Chulainn has acknowledged her necessity. He cannot exist without her, just as the warrior cannot exist without the war. They are 2 halves of the same equation. From this point on, the Morrigan does not attack him again. She does not try to kill him. Instead, she becomes something even more unsettling. She becomes the watcher of his doom. She becomes the harbinger. She begins to follow him, not as an enemy, but as a dark guardian. She knows his death is coming. The Táin will end. The armies will go home. But Cú Chulainn's thread is running out. He has broken too many taboos. He has killed too many men. The balance of the universe demands his life. And the Morrigan, now whole and healed by his own lips, will be the one to guide him to that end. She will not push him off the cliff. She will simply stand at the bottom and wait to catch him. The ford is silent now. The water runs clear again. But the pact has been sealed with milk and blood. The hero has blessed the goddess, and the goddess has accepted the blessing. As Cú Chulainn walks back to his camp, he feels a weight lift from his shoulders, but a shadow settles in his heart. He knows that he has just danced with death and let her lead. The war drags on. The brown bull is eventually captured, dragged to Connaught, where he fights the white-horned bull and kills him, only to die of a bursting heart himself. The entire war, all the death, ends in the death of two animals. It is the ultimate futility. But for Cú Chulainn, the end is not yet. He has a few more years to live, a few more battles to fight. But the Morrigan is always there, standing on the horizon, watching, waiting for the moment when the dog will finally break. We are approaching the end of the hero's journey, the final act of the tragedy, the gathering of the great carnage, the breaking of the geasa, and the washer at the ford is preparing her soap again. But this time, she will not be washing her own wounds. She will be washing the armor of the hound. The years turn like the pages of a book left out in the rain, slowly, heavily, and stained with the memory of storms. The great war of the Táin Bó Cúailnge has ended. The armies have gone home. The brown bull is dead. The white-horned bull is dead. Queen Medb has retreated to Connaught, her ambition bruised, but her hatred burning brighter than ever. And Cú Chulainn, the Hound of Ulster, is no longer the beautiful 17-year-old boy who stood in the ford. He is a man. He is scarred. He is a legend. And like all legends, he is increasingly isolated. In the ancient Celtic world, a hero is defined by his geasa. These are the sacred taboos, the spiritual prohibitions laid upon him at birth or during his initiation. They are the conditions of his power. As long as he keeps his geasa, he is invincible. He is held in the web of fate. But if he breaks them, the web unravels. The protection of the other world fades, and he becomes merely meat and bone, waiting for the butcher. Cú Chulainn has two specific geasa that will become the hinges of his doom. The first is a personal taboo. Because his name means the Hound of Chulainn, he must never eat the flesh of a dog. It would be an act of cannibalism against his own totem. The second is a social taboo, common to all warriors. He must never refuse a meal offered to him by a woman, and he must never pass a cooking hearth without tasting the food if invited. Queen Medb knows this. She knows she cannot kill him with a sword. She has sent armies against him, and he has turned them into mulch. She has sent monsters, and he has skinned them. So she decides to kill him with magic. She decides to dismantle him from the inside out. She gathers the children of Calatin. Calatin was a wizard Cú Chulainn killed during the cattle raid. His wife gave birth to his children, 3 sons and 3 daughters, posthumously. They are born of grief and venom. Medb takes these children and sends them to the ends of the world to learn the darkest arts. They go to Alba, Scotland, to Babylon, and to the volcanic forges of the East. They learn how to weave illusions. They learn how to make a noise that sounds like an army. They learn how to craft spears that never miss. They return to Ireland, missing eyes and limbs, twisted by their dark education. They are the weapon Medb has been forging for years. The conspiracy begins on the plain of Muirthemne. the sons of Calatin create a magical illusion. They create the sound of battle. Cú Chulainn, resting in his fortress at Dundalk, hears the screams of his people. He hears the burning of houses. He sees phantom smoke rising on the horizon. It is a trick, but his hero's heart cannot distinguish between a real cry for help and a magical one. He orders his chariot to be harnessed, and here the Morrigan intervenes. She knows what is happening. She has watched the sons of Calatin weaving their spells. She knows that this is the day the prophecy comes due. The pact she made with Cú Chulainn at the ford, the pact sealed with the 3 drinks of milk, compels her to act. She is no longer trying to kill him. She is trying to save him from his own stupidity. As Cú Chulainn rushes to his chariot, he finds it broken. This is the first omen. The king of chariots, the grey of Macha, liath Macha, the horse that possesses human intelligence, refuses to be harnessed. The horse turns his left side to the master, a sign of absolute disrespect and ill luck. He weeps tears of blood. When Cú Chulainn finally forces the harness onto the beast, the chariot pole snaps. It is the Morrigan's handiwork. She has physically damaged the vehicle to prevent his departure. But Cú Chulainn is stubborn. He fixes the pole. He ignores the horse's tears. He ignores the ominous silence of the birds. He rides out. On the road to the battle that does not exist, he meets 3 old crones sitting by a small fire. They are cooking something on a spit. It is the daughters of Calatin in disguise. They are roasting a dog. They call out to him, "Stay, Cú Chulainn, visit with us. We are poor women, and the food is humble, but hospitality is the law." Cú Chulainn stops. He is trapped. If he passes, he breaks the geis of refusing hospitality. If he stays and eats, he breaks the geis of eating dog. He tries to decline politely. "I cannot stop," he says. "The enemy is at the gates." "You are too proud to eat with the poor," the crone sneers. "If it were a great feast in the king's hall, you would stop. But because it is dog meat and we are ugly, you ride on." The accusation of arrogance stings him. Cú Chulainn, who values his honor above his life, steps down from the chariot. He takes a piece of the meat with his left hand. He puts it in his mouth. He does not swallow it. He spits it out. But the damage is done. The taboo is broken. The text tells us that the strength immediately leaves his left side. His hand goes numb. His shoulder drops. The invincibility that has shielded him for 27 years evaporates. He is now vulnerable. He rides on, one-handed, his heart heavy. And then he comes to the ford. We have spoken of the washer at the ford before. It is the quintessential image of the Morrigan. But this time, it is not a story or a threat. It is a reality. Cú Chulainn sees a woman kneeling in the stream. The water is red. She is weeping, a low, keen sound that chills the blood. She is washing armor, a tunic, a cloak. Cú Chulainn looks closer. He recognizes the embroidery. He recognizes the tears in the fabric. It is his own armor. He turns to his charioteer, Leg. "Do you see that woman?" he asks. "She is washing my spoil. It is for my death that she is preparing. It is the Badb. She is showing him the inevitability of the end. She is telling him, 'Turn back. There is no glory today. only the washing. But Cú Chulainn does not turn back. The tragedy of the hero is that he cannot change his nature. He is a weapon made for war. He cannot sit at home while he believes his people are dying. He rides past the goddess, acknowledging her warning, but refusing her advice. He arrives at the field of battle. The illusion of the burning villages fades, and he sees the real enemy. The armies of Badb are waiting for him. The sons of Calatin are waiting with their 3 magical spears. The prophecy of these spears is specific. 3 spears, the wizard said, and each one will kill a king. The battle begins. Cú Chulainn fights like a demon. The Riastrad comes upon him one last time, but it is weaker now. His left arm is useless. He is fighting with one hand. The first spear is thrown. Lugad, the son of a king Cú Chulainn killed, takes the weapon. "What will this spear kill?" he asks the wizard. "It will kill a king," the wizard replies. Lugad throws. Cú Chulainn dodges, but the spear strikes his charioteer, Leg, the king of charioteers. Leg falls. Cú Chulainn pulls the spear from his friend's body and bids him a sorrowful farewell. He is now alone in the vehicle. The second spear is thrown. What will this spear kill? "It will kill a king." The spear flies. It strikes the gray of Macha, the king of horses. The great beast, which had served the hero since his childhood, collapses, screaming. Cú Chulainn is unhorsed. He stands on the ground, surrounded by thousands of enemies. The third spear is thrown. What will this spear kill? "It will kill a king." Lugad throws the final spear. It hisses through the air. Cú Chulainn raises his sword, but he is slow. The spear strikes him. It pierces his belly. It ruptures his entrails. The king of warriors is hit. The blow is mortal. Cú Chulainn knows it. He looks down at his ruined body. He looks at the gathered armies of Ireland. They are silent, terrified. Even dying, he terrifies them. They do not dare to approach him. He asks permission to go to a nearby lake to drink. The enemies grant it, fearing that if they deny him, his death throes will kill them all. He walks to the lake. He drinks. He washes his wound. Then he makes his final decision. He looks at a tall standing stone, a pillar stone, in the middle of the field. "I will not die lying down like a dog," he whispers. "I will die standing up, facing my enemies." He drags himself to the stone. He takes his own belt, perhaps the very belt that held his sword, and binds himself to the pillar. He ties his broken body upright. He arranges his hair. He grips his sword, the Cruaideen Cú Chulainn, in his right hand. He waits. The armies of Badb watch from a distance. They see him standing there, sword in hand, eyes open, staring at them. They are paralyzed with fear. Is he dead? Is he resting? Is it a trick? Hours pass. The sun begins to set. The light turns golden, then red, then gray. And then the Morrigan comes. She does not come as a woman. She does not come as a warrior. She comes in her true form, the form of the Badb. A large black crow descends from the sky. She circles the standing stone 3 times. The sound of her wings is the only sound in the silent plain. She lands. She lands on the shoulder of the man tied to the stone. She peers into his face. She pecks at his ear. He does not move. The crow settles her wings. She stays there, perched on the dead hero, claiming him. She is the final seal on his life. She is the signal to the world that the Hound of Ulster is gone. Seeing the bird, the army of Medb realizes the truth. "The bird has settled on his shoulder," Lugod shouts. "He is dead!" They rush forward. Lugod, eager to claim the kill, raises his sword to cut off Cú Chulainn's head. But even in death, the hero is dangerous. As Lugod swings, Cú Chulainn's sword, which was gripped tight in rigor mortis, falls from his dead hand. It falls with such weight and sharpness that it slices through Lugod's hand, cutting it off. The hero takes a hand for a head. It is his final act of vengeance. But the story ends with the Morrigan. The crow sits on the pillar stone long after the armies have left, long after the head has been taken, long after the silence has returned to Muir Themna. Why did she try to stop him? Why did she break the chariot? Why did she warn him at the ford? Because the Morrigan is not just the goddess of death. She is the goddess of the heroic cycle. She understands that a hero is a rare and precious resource. She pushes them to their limits. She tests them. She threatens them. But she also honors them. Cú Chulainn was the only one who ever defeated her. He was the only one who ever broke her ribs and blinded her eye. In the twisted romance of the warrior culture, that made him the only one worthy of her protection. When she lands on his shoulder, it is not an act of desecration. It is an act of possession. She is saying, "He belongs to me now. His fame is my fame. His story is my story." The death of Cú Chulainn marks the end of the high heroic age. The great defenders are gone. The world becomes smaller, pettier. The magic begins to recede. But the Morrigan remains. She has seen the gods fall at Moytura. She has seen the hero fall at the pillar stone. She has seen the cycle turn from gold to iron. Now she must retreat. She must go back to the cave. She must go back to the darkness where the cats dwell. The age of myth is ending, and the age of folklore is beginning. The goddess is becoming the ghost. The queen is becoming the Banshee. In our final chapter, we will follow her into that darkness. We will travel to the county of Roscommon, to the Oweynagat, the cave of the cats. We will see how the terrifying Morrigan transformed in the popular imagination into the washerwoman and the Banshee, and how she still haunts the Irish landscape today. The hero is dead. Long live the queen. The fire in the hearth has burned down to embers. The great logs of oak and ash that fueled our journey through the ages of the gods and the heroes have crumbled into glowing red coals. The room is growing colder. The shadows in the corners are lengthening, taking on shapes that look suspiciously like wings, or perhaps the silhouette of a woman standing by a river. We have walked the complete path of the Morrigan. We have seen her birth in the mists of the Tuatha Dé Danann. We have seen her washing her hair in the river Unshin before the Battle of Moytura. We have seen her seduce and destroy the enemies of the gods. We have seen her obsession with the Hound of Ulster, Cú Chulainn, and we have watched as she settled on his dead shoulder in the form of a crow. But what happens when the hero dies? What happens when the great armies disband and the kings are buried under their cairns? Does a goddess simply cease to exist when the poets stop singing the epics? No. She changes. She descends. She moves from the high halls of mythology into the thatched cottages of folklore. She moves from the battlefield to the backyard, and in many ways, this transformation makes her even more terrifying, because in the myths, she hunted heroes. In folklore, she hunts us. In this final chapter, we must explore the legacy of the Morrigan. We must look at how the Phantom Queen became the Banshee. We must look at the physical scar she has left on the landscape of Ireland, the Cave of Cats. And we must try to answer the final question: why does she endure? As Christianity slowly spread across Ireland in the 5th century, the old gods did not vanish. The Irish mind is not one that discards the past. It layers the new on top of the old like strata in a rock face. Lugh became a saint or a fairy king. Brigid became Saint Brigid. But the Morrigan was too wild, too dangerous, and too visceral to be canonized. You cannot make a saint out of a nightmare. So she fragmented. The singular Great Queen broke apart into the myriad spirits of the Irish countryside. The most famous of these shards is the Bean Nigh. In the folklore of Scotland and Ireland, the Bean Nigh is the washerwoman. She is a direct descendant of the Morrigan's aspect as the washer at the ford, but she is no longer the majestic, giant goddess who straddles the river Unshin. She is a figure of pity and terror. She is described as a small, ugly woman with webbed feet, a single nostril, and long, pendulous breasts that hang down so low she must throw them over her shoulders to keep them dry while she works. She is found at lonely streams in the dead of night. Travelers hear the sound, slap, 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 of wet cloth hitting a stone. If they are foolish enough to approach, they see her washing a shroud. If the shroud is white, it is for a stranger. If the shroud is red with blood, it is for the watcher. She is the domesticated echo of the war goddess. She no longer causes the death. She simply cleans up after it. She is the servant of fate, bound to the river, bound to the sorrow of the end. There are legends that say if a man is brave enough, or desperate enough, to sneak up on the Bean Nigh and suckle from her breast, he can claim kinship with her. She will answer 3 questions for him. She will grant him a wish. This is a faint memory of the sovereignty the Morrigan once offered to kings. Even in her diminished, grotesque form, she is still a granter of wishes, a mother of destiny. But the more pervasive shadow she cast is the Banshee. The word Banshee comes from the old Irish bean she, meaning woman of the fairy mound. In the popular imagination, the Banshee is a ghost who screams to announce a death. But if we listen closely to that scream, we hear the echo of the Badb. The Banshee is an ancestral spirit attached to the old families of Ireland, the O'Neills, the O'Briens, the O'Connors. She is the guardian of the lineage. When a member of the clan is about to die, she begins to keen. Keening, from the Irish Oweynagat, is the traditional funeral lament, a high-pitched rhythmic wailing performed by women over the body of the deceased. The Morrigan was the first keener. When the Tuatha Dé Danann suffered losses, she wept. When Cú Chulainn died, she marked his passing. The Banshee is the Morrigan stripped of her sword but left with her voice. She acts as a psychopomp, a guide of souls. She is not evil. she does not kill the person. She mourns them before they are dead. She is the validation of their worth. To have a Banshee scream for you is a sign of high status. It means the other world knows your name. It means you are worthy of a divine lament. But the Morrigan is not just a ghost story. She is a place. If you travel to the west of Ireland today, to the county of Roscommon, you will find the ancient royal complex of Rathcrogan. This was the seat of Queen Medb. It is a landscape of flat-topped mounds, ring forts, and ancient earthworks. And in the middle of a muddy field, often guarded by modern cattle who watch visitors with suspicious eyes, there is a hole in the ground. It does not look like much. A lintel stone, a muddy slope, a dark aperture slipping under the earth. This is the Oweynagat, the Cave of the Cats. In the medieval texts, this cave has another name, Doris Ifrean Naherean, the Hell Gate of Ireland. This is the home of the Morrigan. This is not a metaphorical home. The ancient Irish believed that this cave was a literal passage to the Shee, to the other world. It is the womb of the earth from which the Morrigan emerges. The cats in the name refer to a specific myth where 3 monstrous wild cats emerged from the cave to ravage the country. These were not ordinary felines. They were magical beasts, perhaps related to the cat illusion the Morrigan used against Cú Chulainn, but more likely related to the story of the Ellen Treshend, a 3-headed monster that came out of the cave. The cave is a place of transformation. It is described as the origin point of destruction. In the myth of the Táin, it is said that the Morrigan drove the brown bull of Cooley into this cave to protect him, or to hide him, before the war. The cave connects the surface world of mortals with the deep, chaotic world of the Fomorians and the Tuatha Dé. There is a lesser-known story, the Aided Odra, the death of Odras, which gives us a terrifying glimpse into the Morrigan's life in this cave. It shows us her jealousy and her absolute dominion over the landscape. Odras was a noblewoman of the Tuatha Dé Danann, a lady of the cattle. She had a bull that she loved. The Morrigan, desiring this bull for her own herds, or perhaps for a larger scheme, stole it. She drove the bull to the west, towards Connaught, towards the cave. Odras, brave and foolish, followed her. She tracked the great queen across the bogs and the forests. She arrived at the entrance of the Oweynagat. She was exhausted, thirsty, and desperate. She demanded her bull back. The Morrigan emerged from the darkness of the cave. She did not fight Odras. She did not scream. She simply looked at her. The text tells us that the Morrigan enchanted Odras. With a single spell, she dissolved the woman. She turned Odras from flesh and bone into water. Odras became the river that flows out of the earth there. She became a pool. This is the ultimate expression of the Morrigan's power. She is the land. If you oppose her, you do not just die. You become the land. You become a river, a stone, a hill. You are absorbed back into her body. The Oweynagat is the mouth that swallows the individual and returns them to the collective geography of Ireland. The cave is also inextricably linked to the festival of Samhain, Halloween. The texts say that on Samhain Eve, the Morrigan stands at the mouth of the cave. The gates of the other world open. The birds of Oweynagat fly out. creatures with breath so foul it kills the leaves on the trees. The spirits of the ancestors walk the land. The Morrigan acts as the gatekeeper. She releases the chaos for one night, allowing the world to be turned upside down before sealing it again at dawn. Why do we still tell these stories? Why, in an age of electricity and science, does the image of the crow goddess still make the hair on our arms stand up? Because the Morrigan represents a truth that we have tried to sanitize, but cannot escape. She represents the necessity of darkness. We live in a culture that fears death. We hide it in hospitals. We fear aging. We fear conflict. We want our gods to be kind, our nature to be gentle, and our lives to be linear. But the Morrigan reminds us that nature is not gentle. The winter is cold. The predator eats the prey. The old must give way to the new. She is the sovereign, and sovereignty is not just wearing a crown. Sovereignty is the ability to make the hard choices. It is the ability to wash the armor at the ford. It is the ability to stand in the gap between the worlds and say, "This is the price." She is the shadow self of the human psyche. She is the rage we suppress, the ambition we hide, and the grief we refuse to feel. When Cú Chulainn rejected her love, he rejected his own shadow, and it destroyed him. The lesson of the Morrigan is that we must accept her. We must accept that we are creatures of blood and earth, that we have a capacity for destruction as well as creation. If we respect her, if we leave the milk out on Samhain, if we honor the crow, if we respect the land, she is a protector. She is the fierce mother who fights for her children. But if we disrespect her, if we poison the land and ignore the laws of nature, she becomes the Nemine. She becomes the panic and the ruin. The Oweynagat still exists. You can go there. You can walk through the muddy field in Roscommon. You can climb down into the dark, wet throat of the earth. It is tight, claustrophobic, and smells of ancient clay. If you turn off your torch, the darkness is absolute. It is the darkness of the grave, but also the darkness of the womb. And if you listen, in that silence, you might hear a sound, not a scream, but the soft rustle of feathers, the scratch of a claw on stone, the sound of a woman weeping for a world that is passing away. The myth of the Morrigan is not a story of once upon a time. It is a story of right now. She is the wind rattling your window pane tonight. She is the crow watching you from the telephone wire. She is the sudden, inexplicable shiver that runs down your spine when you walk past a graveyard. She is the great queen, and she is watching. Our journey is done. The fire is out. The ford is crossed. If you have found value in this descent into the shadows, if you have felt the brush of the raven's wing and the spray of the river Unshin, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to Hearths of Myths. We travel to the dark places so that we may better understand the light. May the land hold you. May the sovereignty of your own soul be strong. And may you always recognize the goddess, no matter what face she wears. Good night.